Sticking with our politics lead, just 29 days until the election. Let's check in on CNN's map showing the path to 270 electoral votes. We're only right now seeing 4 states that are leaning neither one way or the other. Florida, North Carolina, Nevada, Ohio. All of them are up for grabs. Every other state seeming to be a Trump state or a Clinton state. Even if Trump, however, sweeps all 4 of these states that are up for grabs, sorry, that's not enough electoral votes. Let's talk more about this with our political panel. We have with us Washington Post reporter David Fahrenthold, who obviously broke the story of the Trump Access Hollywood tape. A lot of people not happy with you, David, because of all the bad language. And senior writer at The Federalist, Mary Catherine Ham. David, let me start with you. First of all, I have to ask, in terms of the scoop, are there more tapes coming? Do you know of women who are going to say that, yes, he actually did these things that he claims in the tape?
Well, there's been women on the record before this that have said in various stories that that sort of thing had happened, and I think we're getting more reports that we're trying to run down of new people who've said this happened to them in the past. So it would not surprise me for us or other people to have found people who say that what Donald Trump said he had done, he really did do.
So let's talk about the electoral map, Mary Catherine. The Clinton campaign is now talking about trying to expand the map, trying to play in Georgia and Arizona, in Missouri. In Missouri, Roy Blunt, the senator who was up for re-election, didn't even go to the debate in his home state. Not a good sign. No. Do you think it's possible? Could she actually win Missouri, Arizona, and Georgia?
It depends on how much oppo, I think, comes out this month and how much of it is severely depressing to the Republican electorate. And I think there will be more. They can expand the map. I think the Republican electorate and the Republican Party has been playing with fire with Donald Trump from the beginning. There was this chance that he could change the map a bit with his appeal in the Rust Belt. We've seen a bit of that with Pennsylvania briefly getting close, with Ohio, the numbers being decent. I've joked that he would be the disruptor who would disrupt too much, and he would lose everything but Ohio and Florida. So that may be where we end up here, because he has significant downsides. And although she does, he's not deft enough to beat her at this point.
David, WikiLeaks released another trove of hacked emails from Hillary Clinton's campaign staffers. In one of the emails, a Bill Clinton top aide, Doug Band, calls Chelsea Clinton a spoiled brat. Another email chain shows advisors debating when Clinton should come out against the Keystone Pipeline so as to avoid making it an issue with the Enviros. Did anything in this latest trove strike you or any of your colleagues as newsworthy?
Well, my colleagues are going through it still. I think they haven't sort of seen them all, but there's nothing, I think, in there that they've found so far beyond what you've mentioned. There's nothing in there that sort of shows us Hillary Clinton in a whole new light or puts the race in some new position. I think this is the sort of things that people thought they already knew about Hillary Clinton. These things are being confirmed.
And that might be one of the problems with these WikiLeaks, which is, like, for instance, with the trove that was released last time, showing that Hillary Clinton was cozy with Wall Street bankers, Mary Catherine, and that maybe she had like a private position and a public position, even if you excuse it away with the Lincoln movie. Right. These are things people already thought about Hillary Clinton, and it's kind of already baked in a little bit.
Yeah, but I think Trump's weaknesses are baked in, too. Yeah. I think this is a problem for some of her coalition, trying to bring these Bernie folks back on, trying to get them not just voting for her, but volunteering and doing the footwork on the ground.
And the millennials, too, yeah.
Right, but the problem is that Trump doesn't have a ground game, and such that he has is from the RNC, which is now very doubtful about whether it wants to work with him at all to some degree. So I think, again, the American people are always weighing, like, who is the worst of these candidates? And it's a tough call.
David, I just have to ask, when you got this tape on Friday, what was your reaction when you saw it? Did you just think, holy cow? I mean, or perhaps more fitting words that would fit in with the theme of the tape, but I mean, or did you have any idea it was going to be this explosive?
I knew it was going to be big. I didn't think it was going to be this big. But certainly, I mean, the language in there is so different than we've heard Trump use. And the key thing to me was that, you know, the fact that it was private meant so much. We've seen Trump in public say so many outrageous things that would have killed off Mitt Romney or some other Republican candidate in the years past. What was different about this was that he wasn't playing a role. There was no sort of showmanship exemption that he got there. He was just talking to just a few people in private, seemingly truly describing what he did and had done. I think that's what made it so powerful. But no, I didn't know it was going to be as big as it turned out to be.
Part of what made it powerful for me, because I'm not surprised that he talks like this, is that it actually wasn't that private. He was mic'd up in what is for him a professional setting with several people, including lighting guys, presumably, and camera guys and audio guys, who he doesn't know very well. Like, it wasn't like he was chatting with a buddy or in a locker room. This was, I think that to me is where it crossed into like, what the heck is going on here?
Yeah, it was odd, and we've debated this and discussed this at length, but I don't know of any locker room where anybody talks like that. I've never heard of any man talk that way. David, you're a man. Have you ever heard anyone talk that way?
No, and that's what's people call it locker room talk, and I think the implication is, well, he was just using naughty words, or he was talking about women and sort of appraising their attractiveness. This is not what that is. This is somebody saying, here's what I do to women. Here, I kiss them when, I grope them. I take advantage of them, and I can because I'm famous. I mean, that's not the kind of thing that I think you hear in any locker room.
Locker rooms are like, quit giving us a bad name,
Right,
man.
right, exactly.
Yeah,
Perhaps
seriously.
there might be some locker rooms and some prison gyms, perhaps. Mary Catherine, one thing I want to ask you about this morning, Mike Pence at the morning shows, and he was railing against Bill Clinton's accusers, trying to tie them into Hillary. Take a listen.
I remember the extraordinary avalanche of scandals that came out of President Bill Clinton's despicable behavior, even with a 23-year-old intern named Monica Lewinsky.
Does this win over anybody? I guess that's my question. Are there people in Northern Virginia where you live, in the I-4 corridor in Florida, the Philly suburbs, who think, oh yeah, good point?
Right. So here's the thing. There's a part of my right-winger soul that goes like, yes, he should pay a price for this. It should be thrown in their faces. His behavior was despicable, and it wasn't treated with correct seriousness by many on the left because he was given a pass because he's a Democrat. Same thing with many Kennedy foibles and other things. Does it reach out to independent voters and college-educated women? For the most part, I don't think so, because the American people, like it or not, from people like me, have decided that they like Bill Clinton and that they have forgiven him for this, for the most part. And so I don't think that you are doing anything but bringing up old stuff from their perspective, even though I might think, okay, this is a righteous attack. I'm not sure it's doing you any good.
David, Mary Catherine, thank you as always. Appreciate it.